I've read a few things. You're also concerned about the university administrators are concerned. You've mentioned this with things like freshman retention and time to degree.
Absolutely.
Well, that
yes.
kind of thing. What role can the library play in helping with these kinds of issues that upper level administrators are interested in?
I think we can help most by prioritizing the way we spend our time and effort better than perhaps we've done in the past. Concentrating with the academic advisors outside the library on thinking about where are the hard parts for our students. Are there particular freshman or sophomore courses that catch more students and throw them off the tracks than others? Well, that's a good place to put your public services, your subject librarians, to think about how can you work with faculty to design and support academic experiences at that level that are maximally successful for the people who
like
go through
trouble
that.
spots and addressing those.
Sure. We will, it's a little like collections. We are understaffed with professional librarians. Every librarian is understaffed with professional librarians. The right number of professional librarians is one per user globally. We're never going to achieve that. So we need to think about how we prioritize the work we do and where it can have the best effect. One of the things I like about Arizona State is that our fundamental institutional missions have been refined and sharpened and clarified by a brilliant president and his colleagues. And so it's easier to know where we should be pointing than I think it is in some other institutions. And so we look forward to this. One other factor in that is if all of our students are online students, then the delivery of services for students needs to be invented to be really effective and really accessible online. We do a chat with a librarian button on our webpage. Well, right now, for some hours of the day, we're outsourcing that by sharing the service with other libraries based on time of day and time zones and so forth. Difficult, but I'm not so sure that's a good idea, that we shouldn't have ASU personnel 24/7 available who really know our curriculum, know our students, and are able to respond in the best ways. It's a direction in which to work.
So this was a question about freshmen and retention. Let me ask you, and this is in relation to the value of the library, are you doing work looking 5 years, 10 years past graduation on graduates? And to prove the value of the institution might be how successful are the graduates going out 5 years or 10 years?
Well, for what you can do with the students who are here in front of you, you need to defer a lot, consult a lot, but defer a lot to the people who are designing success for students. Library shouldn't have its own model of what makes a successful student and try to live to that. I would say, though, you're pointing in another direction that I'm interested in and spoke about a bit in my presentation, and that is my conviction that there are no good reasons. Well, I'll generalize it this way. There's no good reason why anybody should ever be excluded from any library. Lots of reasons why. Historically, we've wanted to be as inclusive as we can, so we build marvelous public libraries, and then we ask to see your driver's license to know where you come from, whether we give you full privileges or not. You walk into a university library, you've got to have that right ID card, you've got to authenticate. There's a lot of reasons why that's the case. But I'm convinced that in the long run, those reasons don't hold up. I know people in what you'd call knowledge industries who are frustrated by the fact that they can access the sort of stuff we take for granted only with much greater difficulty and with much greater expense. I had this conversation around a table like this with 3 consultants not too long ago. And I said, so how does your firm get information? Oh, well, it's difficult. Oh, well, it's difficult. And the young'un, the junior associate sitting over here, had sort of a twinkle in her eye while they were talking about this. And I said, yes, so Kristen, so what's the twinkle in your eye about? And she said, oh, well, my sister's still at Ohio State, so she just lets me use her ID.
Yeah, she has access to all the libraries.
Okay, I think that's the Lord's way of telling us that there is a demand there is a responsibility there to find ways to make this sort of information available and to continue to be part of the success of people's lives. If ever we had a model that college was like a gas station where we filled you up and you ran on that fuel for another 40 years, it was never true, and to the extent it had any truth about it, it died a while ago. And now we need 24/7 filling stations for everybody.
Where's the funding to come? Of course, there's the question with the industry as it is counting. I know.
Okay, we're talking strategy here, and you're giving me details.
I understand.
No, but I say that half in jest, as often things I may say are half in jest.
Right.
If we don't focus on what the goal is,
Yes.
I will quote the recently departed and dear mentor for millions of people around the world, Mr. Lawrence Peter Barra. If you don't know where you're going, you're not likely to get there.
Right.
Purpose of my presentation here, and what I think I can contribute a lot in my job, is keep looking out at that horizon and think about where it is we're really
good.
trying to go, and how what we're doing contributes to that.
Your discussion about your little talk with the consultants and how difficult it is for them to get information also highlighted something else you said about this library-size hole in the internet. And it strikes me as you talk about that's something that libraries do need to work on, is to get their information out there so that it's more accessible and more available to people who need it.
So once upon a time, 15 years ago, I gave a talk to a big audience at the Society of College and University Planning. The question period afterwards, somebody got up and said, "You're a classics professor, aren't you?" I said, "Yeah." "You've been talking about marketing a lot. Classics professors do that?" And what I said was one of my best off-the-cuff answers. I said, well, you realize that the classicists are the ones who invented marketing back in the ancient Greek world. We just called it rhetoric. I mean that dead seriously. I think that we have an obligation as professionals, knowledge professionals who know all the good stuff we know, to do the best possible job we can of marketing the resources that we have. In a world in which we are now competed with, as we were never competed with when I was a kid, the available supply of really bad information and really misleading sources is approaching infinity. We therefore have an obligation to make sure that what we know to be the good stuff gets out there. I said to my staff when I first met them last year that one way to think about this is to imagine what would happen if we monetized every transaction in the library. And I had to say, no, we're not actually going to do that. But imagine if you were going to do that. Every search, every query, every consultation with a librarian, every checkout, every photocopy, if there was money in it for us, what would we do to maximize revenue, to push product? Think about that. I said, okay, whatever it is we should do in that way, we should be doing anyway, because it's important to the users that we push product successfully in this environment. And we need to think that way. Changing your reference services, changing your chat with a librarian, changing your discovery tools by thinking about them as marketing devices, thinking about them as ways to put what's really useful and really important in the hands of your users as quickly and easily as you possibly can, is going to get us more focused on some of the things that we really need to do.
This leads me to my final question, I think, and that's this notion of, you've expressed concern about scholarly integrity, peer review, and so on. And with the way scholarly communication is changing, the open access, and you just alluded to, there's a lot of junk out there. What can libraries do to help with this, to make sure that we do have scholarly integrity in the materials that are available to our students and faculty?
I'm thinking of trying to trademark the phrase, the good stuff. I think I might have some trouble doing that. But it's part of my vocabulary to say, in libraries, we have the good stuff. Some of it is the good stuff for its intrinsic quality. Some of it is the good stuff because we've collected smartly, and we have the cultural heritage of America, some of which is pure garbage, but it's well-chosen pure garbage that needs to be preserved so that you can understand the Ku Klux Klan of 100 years ago, for example. But that means we need to be the best partners that the people who make the good stuff can have, and here I would emphasize scholars and scientists. Publication is getting less and less interesting, and publishing as, here I have this information and I make it available to you, is in some ways easier. But the managing conscious choice of what the good stuff is and marketing that good stuff, that comes closer to what our core business has always been and what we should be concentrating on. If I look out 25, 50 years, I wouldn't bet that there will be publishers as we know them now. Yeah, there probably will be, but I'm not going to bet on that, partly because I never like to bet on things unless I'm absolutely sure they're going to come true. So even I would bet that the process we now call peer review, perhaps transformed, but that process will still be around and will be a high-order priority for academics and for their academic librarians in order to make sure that we can tell what's the good stuff and what's not the good stuff. At the end of the day, if we're not delivering that information and marketing that information to our users, we might as well be some website or other somewhere that you take your chances on.
Even with the good stuff, people always opt for the easy option. It's a function of who we are.
Yep.
We want to be more efficient. How do you propose that institutions work with industry to make these discovery engines? We used to make our own homegrown things, and we moved away from that because it's difficult to maintain them.
It's both the discovery engines, but it's also the product.
Well, yes.
I said a little while ago that I'm worried about where ebooks are. One of the problems with ebooks in our libraries right now is they are a complete annoying pain to use.
Right.
Okay, that means they won't get used. Maybe the publishers are content with people going to use the bootleg PDF instead, but I don't think so. In fact, a court in New York just closed down several of the bootleg PDF sites. That war is continuing. So therefore, it's our obligation to push really hard on the publisher community to make the things they call ebooks as transparently, easily accessible to use, so that, my dream is I'm walking across the ASU campus someday and I hear a student saying to another, yeah, I don't do Google searches anymore. I go to the library. That's where the good stuff is. Okay, maybe not before I retire, but I'm working on it.
What has been the biggest surprise for you as the Dean of Libraries?
Oh gosh, the biggest surprise. Apart from the extraordinarily large number of people who were willing to help me shelve my books in my office when I got there, I hadn't had that experience before. I think maybe it's my awareness of the gap that is opening between where the next generation is and what we're able to provide. Their life as digital natives, this is trite enough to say, versus the way in which we provide the services. And if I come back then to say we've got to do the marketing, it's because I think we've got to find a way to bring together the riches that we have to offer and will have to offer with the best way to make them support the lives, the careers, the imaginations of our students and our faculty, and ultimately as librarians, the whole societies in which we live.